Several years ago, back when dinosaurs inhabited people's homes, not those dinosaurs, those dinosaurs. Anyway, back then I was teaching a professional development class on data analytics for a corporate client. I had about a dozen salaried employees in a conference room at the corporate headquarters when I made a comment about how easy it is to find information on nearly anyone online. One person in class immediately spoke up and said, "Not on me, I have an unlisted phone number." I paused briefly, I looked him in the eye, and I simply said, "Challenge accepted." I unplugged my laptop from the projector in the room so that nobody could see my screen, and then using nothing but that individual's name from the name tint in front of them, I logged into a website, did a little search, and in less than a minute, I asked, "Is your spouse's name such and such, and are your children named this and this?" The person who had been so confident just moments earlier turned pale and looked like they were going to get sick. They didn't say anything, but slowly nodded their head. At our next break, they approached me and told me that they had recently moved to their current home from another state after they had testified against someone in a major case and they started receiving death threats. I gave them several pieces of advice on how to minimize their digital footprint to make it harder for someone to find them. But I stressed to them that short of a federal witness protection program, it was nearly impossible to completely disappear. I am Dr. John Padfield. I'm a business professor and a longtime privacy advocate. And this is Business Reform, where I discuss issues at the intersection of business, health, and the environment. In this video, I'm going to discuss businesses whose business model involves trafficking your personal information online. More importantly, though, I'm going to tell you about a company who can stop these privacy parasites dead in their tracks and make it much more difficult for someone to find personal information about you online. This is not a sponsored video, but I do have an affiliate link that I have put into the show notes so that if you're interested after watching the video, you can click on that and get a 20% discount on a service that I personally have been using for many years. Also, stay to the end of the video to see how to enter a drawing to win one of 5 American-made filtered water bottles I am giving away when my subscriber count hits certain milestones. When I disconnected my laptop from the projector, I went to what's called a people search website. The only thing I knew about this individual was their name, and I knew the city that we were in. When I put their information into the People Search website, I had about a dozen hits. I wasn't sure which of these individuals by that name was the person in my room, but the website gave me the age of each person, and just looking at the person in the room with me, I guessed what their age was, and I quickly narrowed it down from about 12 people to probably 4 people. And then the next thing was, there are 4 people with this individual's name living in the state. I don't know which one it is, but I know what city I'm in. I know this person works in this building, and so when I looked at the cities that these 4 individuals were in for that state, there was only one that was near the building that I was in. And so that made it very easy for me to guess which of the 12 people was the one in the room with me. I stopped at just asking, "Is your spouse's name this and your children's name this and this?" If I had wanted to, I could have spent a few dollars on a credit card and received a whole lot more information. Photographs of their house, a list of all of their relatives, information about property that they own, any court proceedings that they had been a part of, etc., etc. There are various names for the type of website that I went to. Some businesses are referred to as data brokers, other times they're called data aggregators or people search websites. While those terms are not exactly the same, they are all closely related. These are companies that have a business model that involves trafficking information about you from whatever source they can obtain that information. I plan to make a Privacy Parasites Part 2 video that goes into detail on some of the businesses that sell your information to data brokers. And in that video, you're probably going to see names that surprise you. But for this video, I'm just focusing on the data brokers themselves. Exactly what type of information are we talking about that these websites have on you? Well, it varies from company to company, but typically it includes your name, date of birth, marital status, names of relatives, your current address along with all former addresses, the property value for where you currently live. Sometimes there's a photo of your current home, your current phone number, both home and cell numbers, former phone numbers, as many email addresses as you use, your education level, your occupation, your economic health, basically your credit score, photos of you, photos that you've posted online, any court records of anything that you've been involved in, sometimes a list of hobbies and pets, your social media presence. All of this information is readily available to anyone with a credit card who wants to look you up online. One of the companies that collects and sells your information has a YouTube channel where they promote all of the, quote, legitimate uses for their service, such as local businesses who need to get in touch with a customer but don't have that customer's contact information. In another video, the data broker suggests that clubs, churches, and other organizations might want to, quote, check up on people wanting to join their group before deciding to let them in. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the legality of using someone's social media presence or their number of children or their marital status to determine whether or not to let them join your organization, but it reeks of discrimination to me. However, I'm sure there are plenty of nosy people, whether they're family members, co-workers, neighbors, plenty of people that would be willing to pay money to be able to look people up and learn things about them. But beyond the nosy neighbors and co-workers, there are other people who use these types of websites for much darker purposes. Stalkers can take a person's name from an employee directory, a name badge, or a social media account and look them up. Once they know where someone lives, whether they're married, and whether they own a dog, they may even start following that person around to learn even more about them. An author from Computer World wrote an article entitled Social Media Search, Stalker's Paradise, in which he described how easy it is to find photos of someone he met once 5 years ago, and now he knows what color they painted their child's room. Also, various forms of identity theft are skyrocketing, up 67% between 2019 and 2021. Let's see, what does a criminal need to open an account or take out a loan in someone else's name? Basically, all the information that they need they could get from a people search website. And if that's not bad enough, a survey from July 2022 reported on in the HIPAA Journal shows that 31% of respondents use a birthday as a password for one or more of their online accounts. With data brokers selling the names of your spouse, children, and other relatives, it would be relatively easy for someone to look up these individuals, find their birthdays, and start guessing your passwords if you're using a child's name or a brother's birthday as your password. Even worse yet, these data brokers are creating serious national security risk by selling personal data of members of the U.S. military who are deployed overseas. Just to clarify, I am not talking about selling the information of thousands of people, some of whom happen to be service members. I'm talking about selling a list of service members. A researcher at Duke Tech Policy Lab has seen data brokers marketing data that includes U.S. service personnel family members, home addresses, and even their real-time GPS locations. As always, I have included links to all of my sources in the show notes below. By now you might be thinking, these data brokers seem like shady businesses. Somebody should sue them. Well, I started doing a little looking into that, and I found out that's actually a pretty common occurrence. The first data broker I did a search on was Spokeo, and I found out they were a defendant in a lawsuit that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. That case was a defamation lawsuit in which Spokeo had inaccurate information about the plaintiff, which the plaintiff claimed had caused them harm when applying for a job. But that is just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. Spokeo also has 2 class action suits for using people's identities for advertising without their consent and for scamming customers who are buying information about people. Then there's the case of Kelman v. Spokeo, in which the plaintiffs allege they were, quote, harmed by Spokeo's business practices. None of them used or subscribed to Spokeo's services, yet each of their information was used in one of Spokeo's teaser profile ads, end quote. The suit goes on to allege that the plaintiffs' names, information, and likeness were associated on teasers, with Spokeo having information about employment history, marital status, etc. But then Spokeo went on to claim that they have, quote, information about arrest, felonies, and court records that people can access after purchasing a membership to Spokeo. But that's just Spokeo. What about all the other data aggregators? There are dozens and dozens of them online. I looked up another data broker called Intelius and found they were defendants in a class action suit brought by their customers who accused Intelius of, quote, tricking customers into signing up for membership programs while they were purchasing products and forwarding their credit card information to other vendors without their permission. Intelius was ordered to pay a $10.5 million settlement in that case. I also found that Intelius was a defendant in another class action lawsuit for allegedly violating Illinois publicity rights laws. So it appears the first two data brokers I looked up seemed to have a lot of legal problems. So I chose a third data broker called Been Verified, and to my surprise, they did not have any class action lawsuits against them. However, I did find they had been the subject of 196 complaints to the Better Business Bureau over the past 3 years, and 86 complaints just within the past 12 months. Been Verified has also been the subject of a complaint to the United States Fair Trade Commission over their business practices. I looked up a fourth data broker called MyLife and found they had been charged by the Fair Trade Commission with creating misleading background reports. By now I was starting to see a pattern emerge, but I decided to look up one more data broker to see if I could find one with a clean record. I did a search for instant Checkmate, and I found that both they and another data broker called InfoTrack Information Services were charged by the Fair Trade Commission for selling consumer data in violation of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Instant Checkmate was fined $525,000 and InfoTrack was fined $1 million. There are dozens of other data aggregators / data brokers / people search websites out there selling your personal information, but I think I've made my point with these 5. Every data broker that I researched, and even one that I didn't research that just appeared in a story about one that I was researching, every one of them was mired in lawsuits, FTC complaints, and consumer complaints to the Better Business Bureau. At this point, you may be wondering, how is this even legal? Do I really need to say it? According to the markup.org, a not-for-profit big tech watchdog group, just 25 of the dozens and dozens of data brokers spent $29 million lobbying Congress in 2020. Oracle and Accenture alone spent over $12 million lobbying Congress in 2020. And if that isn't enough reason for Congress to keep data trafficking legal, they are also customers of data brokers because they want to target potential voters with very specific messages designed to resonate with dog owners, bicycle enthusiasts, gun owners, etc. The more politicians know about you, the more likely they can craft a specific message to get you to vote for them. So if you're waiting for Congress to do anything, I've got some bad news for you. We may see home phones make a comeback before Congress acts to protect your privacy. Thankfully, you don't have to wait for Congress. You can take matters into your own hands. For years now, I have personally used a service called Delete Me to have my information purged from the online data brokers. Delete Me sends takedown notices to 65 different data aggregators to have my data removed. Delete Me continues to monitor those 65 sites, and they regularly add new ones to make my data much more difficult to find online. Sometimes one of those data brokers will purchase new data from another source and put me back into their database, but because Delete Me continues to monitor those data brokers, they send new takedown notices every time my data is detected. Signing up for Delete Me was the first step that I recommended to the individual in my class who had moved to a different state because they were receiving death threats. I have put a link in the show notes below that you can use to get a 20% discount on Delete Me, and using that link helps out the channel. My subscription to Delete Me is some of the best money I've ever spent. A recurring theme on this channel is choose wisely, and I encourage you to choose to sign up for Delete Me, link in the description below, to purge your data from the 65 data broker websites. I also encourage you to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you will see when I publish my next video in the Privacy Parasites series. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, and leave a comment to help ensure the YouTube algorithm recommends this video to more people. Doing so will also automatically enter you in a drawing for a free 32-ounce American-made filtered water bottle worth $45. I will be giving away a total of 5 bottles when my subscriber count hits the following milestones. Thank you for watching, and remember, choose wisely.